And this weather forecast is brought to you by GetGreatHair.biz. Features Monate hair care products. Samples and business opportunities are available at GetGreatHair.biz. Friday weather forecast, mostly sunny to partly sunny today in the mid-50s. Clouds and rain developing late tonight, about 45 to 50. Good chance of rain on and off for Saturday and Saturday night, mostly cloudy skies. Temperatures in the mid-50s on Saturday. Sunday, high pressure builds in with sunshine, and the high about 50 to 55. Jonesboro, that's your KLEK 102.5 FM weather.
From Feature Story News in Brussels, I'm Jack Parrock. A fire at a hospital in South Korea has left at least 39 people dead and over 70 people injured. The White House is refusing to comment on reports that President Trump tried to fire the special prosecutor investigating ties between his election campaign and the Russians. Separately, Trump's administration has laid out an immigration plan that could include a path to citizenship for 1.8 million young immigrants.
It's 9:01.
KLEK LP Jonesboro, the voice of Arkansas Minority Advocacy Council. It's now time for Community Conversations, a program focusing on the people working to make the Jonesboro community a better place, while offering viewpoints from all sides of the issues. The views expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of KLEK 102.5 FM, the voice of Arkansas Minority Advocacy Council, or our underwriters or sponsors.
KLEK 102.5 FM, good morning to you on your Friday. It's January 26, 2018. This is Community Conversations. Kato Wonder is in the studio with you. I'm alone right now. My co-host, Quabila. Actually, my host now, I should say co-host, but it's really her show now. I'm actually filling in for Quabila, but she's at the house. We're going to try to get her on the phone in a minute. We're supposed to have a guest today, Mrs. Cathy Hall from Arkansas State University, discussing cervical cancer, but Mrs. Hall has not gotten here yet, so I'm going to see if I can get Quabila on the phone. I've been working with this new phone system, so we're going to see if this works. And if not, we may have to do this the old school way and put the mic up against the speakerphone. We're gonna find out, y'all. The fun and joys of live radio. Hopefully each and every one of you are having a good time this morning. All you out there listening to radio language. And Quabila's not answering her phone. I just told her I was gonna call. Message her on Facebook. She may not be near the phone. Of course, how's everyone doing out there today? Hey. Quabila, can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, let me turn you up in the on the board here. Well, Mrs. Hall has not gotten here yet. Hopefully, she will join us. But Quabila, kind of give the synopsis of what today's show is going to be about once our guest arrives.
Well, I was hoping to highlight the topic of cervical cancer. Yes, it is one that is well known. But there's still a lot of women that are being diagnosed with this disease. The whole purpose of raising awareness is so that women can stop overlooking what they think may be simple signs and symptoms and get checked out, ask those questions, be vigilant at the doctor's office. Do not let anything go. It's just a minor ache or pain, or it's just something, just talk to your doctor, get checked out, don't let it slide. Too many women are dealing with unnecessary diseases and conditions because they're not asking the right questions or getting the necessary checkup.
Okay, I'm going to just kind of give an overview of some information. This is from the Mayo Clinic. It says cervical cancer is a type of cancer that occurs in the cells of the cervix, the lower part of the uterus that connects to the vagina. Various strains of the human papillomavirus, HPV, a sexually transmitted infection, play a role in causing most cervical cancer. When exposed to HPV, a woman's immune system typically prevents the virus from doing harm. In a small group of women, however, the virus survives for years, contributing to the process that causes some cells on the surface of the cervix to become cancer cells. Quabila, do you have the app up? Turn the volume down on the app. It's kind of the same as radio. It gives a feedback loop. Mrs. Hall, come on in.
I don't have.
Okay. Come on, sit right here in this chair. Okay, yeah. remember when you're on the phone as a guest, you actually can't have to turn the radio down, or I guess in your case, turn the app down.
I don't have the app on.
Oh, okay. All right, and we're joined by Mrs. Cathy Hall, and we're certainly glad to have Mrs. Hall in the studio. I was just kind of reading some information from the Mayo Clinic, a little bit about cervical cancer, but we'll let the expert herself actually tell us a little bit more information. I know.
Hello, everybody. It's always a pleasure to be here. Good news about cervical cancer is
If you can just come up a little closer to the mic, put the headphones on.
Is the rates are dropping, but it is still a concern for women. And I'd like to talk a little bit about screening, because a lot of women still don't have their screening done. And several years ago, a new tool came out to help women with cervical cancer, and it's a vaccine called Gardasil. So I want to make sure I talk about that too. But we've had the Pap smear. That's been a tool we've had since about 1943. But unfortunately, not all women get Pap smears that need to have Pap smears, which is the most reliable way to detect cervical cancer. 46% of women that have cervical cancer have never had a Pap test, and 10% have not had a Pap test in the last 5 years. And only about 82% of women in the age group that need to have Pap smears, age 21 to 65, have had one in the last 3 years.
Okay, Miss Hall, can you put your headphones on? Because we have Kabila on the line. You have to have headphones on so you can hear her comments and questions.
Hi.
Kabila, are you still with us? Okay, I may have to call her back. So let me try. I think I may have lost her. So let me try to call her back. Oh, oops.
Sorry, I was running a couple minutes late. I don't feel good today. I drove right past Franklin and kept going down Wilkins. I'm dizzy. I don't feel good. So I hope it makes sense.
Okay. Well, like I said, we're gonna make the most of this. Oh, I doubt the wrong. See, my finger's going too fast. Told you the joys of live radio.
I told you I've taught on compressed video since 1992 to West Memphis, BB, and Mountain Home. So it's live interactive TV, but it uses the phone lines. So I get it.
Okay, I apologize.
Yeah, I think we lost you. Okay. So I think Dr. Hall was kind of giving her introduction about Mrs. Hall was giving her introduction on some of the topics that she wanted to talk about.
Okay, I was listening to. Good morning, Dr. Hall.
Mrs.
Mrs. Hall. I apologize. And I apologize for not being there. I was listening to her statistics, and unfortunately, I fall in that category of women who don't go to the doctor. A lot of it is fear. So can you explain why, in the fear factor, or that aspect of why women don't get checked out?
Well, I think a lot of women just don't like going to have a pelvic exam because they're embarrassed, because it is a private part of our bodies, and I think it's just kind of perpetuated among women. Oh, they dread going, they don't like going. And like any kind of screening or checkup, I think it's real important that you just kind of have to view it as a favor that you do for yourself and the people that love you, just like going to the dentist or going to the eye doctor or getting a flu shot. That it's just something that you do. Another way to look at it is kind of like maintaining your vehicle. Hopefully we don't drive around with bald, naked tires and no oil or antifreeze in our cars. And it's just something that you have to do to maintain yourself.
Okay, thanks. Another question, another thing I would like for you to please highlight. McGinsey mentioned earlier about the impact of HPV and other STDs that can either contribute to or aggravate cervical issues or lead to cervical cancer. I know a little bit about HPV, but my knowledge only goes back to 15 years. I know more research has been done. So can you please explain, first of all, what HPV is and how it has progressed over the years and how it affects women's health?
What?
Would you able to hear me?
Is there? Yeah. We may have to edit this part out. Since we're talking about a
Well,
body
this is
part,
live.
can I? It's live. Okay. All right. Okay. I just don't want to say anything that's distasteful or what body parts I could talk about.
Well, I mean, we're talking scientifically. I mean,
Okay.
I'm
I
sure you're not going to use slang words to describe
Oh no, I'm not
body
going to
part,
use
but
slang, but sometimes people don't.
But
want
I mean,
to hear their-
you know, we're talking about cancer, a cancer
Right.
that affects the reproductive organs. So I mean,
Okay.
we're gonna talk about penis and vagina.
Oh, there you go. Those
know.
are the two words I didn't know if I could
You know,
say
because,
on
but
there.
we're saying this in a scientific,
Sure,
medical
absolutely.
standpoint. So
Well, human papillomavirus is a virus, and gosh, there are hundreds of viruses that people have that they can spread to each other. But in the last couple of decades, we've figured out that cervical cancer is definitely caused by human papillomavirus, and there are lots of different strains of it, but there are two main bad ones that we worry about, number 16 and 18, and that's what the Gardasil vaccine protects against. And it's a virus that is passed among people from men to women, and women can give it back to men, but it lives on the foreskin of the male penis, is what we think. And the virus affects a lot of women, but not all women will develop cervical cancer, because the virus will actually sort of embed in the cervical tissue, and over years and years it causes changes that can become cancerous. So over time, a lot of women's immune systems will conquer and get rid of the HPV virus, and then some women do not. It causes changes over time that become cervical cancer. So if somebody doesn't get exposed today and then they have cervical cancer next year, it's a process that takes years, and there are changes that happen along the way that are abnormal, but they're not necessarily cancer yet. And that the word that we use to describe that is called dysplasia. And so that's what is detected by a pap smear. So if someone has cervical dysplasia and it hadn't progressed to cervical cancer, we know that it's, you know, definitely treatable, and the prognosis is really, really good. So there's no reason for anybody to die from cervical cancer anymore. It shouldn't happen, but unfortunately it does.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get into how someone is screened or tested, and kind of explain the difference between those two. I think some people have a misunderstanding of what screening is and what it can detect versus actually getting the full testing done in a doctor's office.
Okay. Well, basically, women aged 21 to 65 need to have pap smears done. And a pap smear is just part of a complete pelvic exam where the woman goes in, you go to the nurse practitioner, you go to the physician, you get your height and weight and your blood pressure and other vital signs done. And you lie on the exam table, you put your feet in the stirrups, and there's a little tiny device, a little wooden spatula, a little brush, and they get samples that shed off of your cervix. They insert the speculum that sort of opens up the vaginal opening so they can see, and someone will actually look at your cervix and look and see if there are any lesions, if there's any redness or irritation, kind of like somebody looking in the back of your throat when they put a pen light and they examine what your throat looks like. And they get tissue samples, and it doesn't hurt. They're put on a little glass slide, and then a pathologist looks at the cells just like they would a biopsy or any other kind of tissue sample, and determines if those cells are totally normal, if they're abnormal in any way, if they're kind of on the progression chain of becoming cancer, and we call that dysplasia, but dysplasia again is not cancer, and then they can also look and determine if the cells are cancerous. Okay, and then usually part of the pelvic exam is the examiner inserts a couple of fingers inside the vagina and also feels on the abdomen, and they can feel feel the size and shape of the uterus, the size and shape of the ovaries, and that's just another part of the exam. But a pap smear is just specifically the part of collecting the cervical cells so they can be examined under a microscope.
Okay. Now, can you also explain, once someone has gone through the exam, and there is a notification that there are some abnormal cells for dysplasia, can you explain some of the symptoms, signs and symptoms of actual cervical cancer?
Okay. And a lot of women have abnormal pap smears that come back. That is as common as rain. And I want to stress the importance of follow-up. Again, this is where the fear factor inhibits somebody's health. They may get a phone call that there were some abnormal cells on their pap smear and they need to come back for a recheck. If it has not progressed to cervical cancer, a lot of times it may just be from an infection, and a cream or different medication may solve it, or sometimes they have just some of those cells removed. But if it actually is cancer, then there's some signs and symptoms that the woman might have that are early that don't need to be ignored. One is having a spotting between your periods, because usually we're talking about women that are still menstruating. So if they have bleeding between their periods, that's not normal. Or if they have a foul-smelling discharge, that is not normal. Or if they have spotting or bleed after they have sexual intercourse.
Definitely an interesting discussion. We are speaking with Mrs. Cathy Hall, and we are discussing cervical cancers, things to look out for about testing. Kabila, do you have any other questions?
Yes. So once someone has been diagnosed with cervical cancer, what are the next steps?
Okay, if it is early disease, then surgery is going to be the treatment. So a hysterectomy is usually the surgery that's going to be done. So unfortunately, if someone does have invasive cervical cancer and they are still of childbearing age, then that affects their fertility. They're not going to be able to have children once the uterus or the womb has been removed. But that can be a curative, life-saving surgery.
Well, I would definitely think so, given the choice between life or death,
Absolutely. It's sad. So again, if people go for screening, once they become sexually active, especially by age 21, young women need to have gone to a gynecologist or a nurse practitioner and had a pap smear and pelvic exam. And it's something that you just need to do. If you have 3 normal pap smears in a row, then you can go about every other year. But it's something that you don't put off doing and go every 10 years, because then people are more likely to present with a problem.
All right.
Okay.
All right, Mrs. Hall, we got about 5 minutes left in our interview, so just want to make sure that you get the opportunity to get any information out there that may not have been covered.
Okay. I would like to talk about risk factors. That's something that we hadn't really talked about. Again, risk factors, the big risk factor is having the HPV infection, and there is a vaccine that's recommended for both boys and girls starting as early as age 9. So it's recommended to get Gardasil vaccine. It's a series of 3 injections, and age 9 to 26. After 26, we kind of assume that women have already been exposed to it and the virus is already in their body and the vaccine's not really going to be effective. Again, not everybody that gets HPV infection is going to develop cervical cancer, but you don't really know if someone's going to be impacted by the virus cancer-wise or not. Another risk factor is women that start having sexual intercourse at an early age, or women that have had many sexual partners. That just increases the likelihood of being exposed. Smoking is a risk factor. It doubles the risk factor. Also, having a good diet can help prevent lots of different kinds of cancers. It's sort of a ammunition you can have on your side. Eating a lot of fruits and vegetables. Also, being overweight is a risk factor. And having HIV. So those are just some of them, some of the risk factors.
All right, Quabila?
Okay. I'm glad she brought up the topic of either being sexually active at a young age or having multiple partners. It seems like a lot of people, not only going to say a lot, but some people kind of play fast and loose with their health without regard to the possible consequences that can occur. Mm-hmm. And so, at what age do you think parents should really start talking to their children and being proactive about this? Not just cervical cancer, but their overall reproductive system health and things of that nature.
The earlier, the better. You're talking to a nurse who's the mother of 2 daughters who are in their late teens, early 20s.
Okay.
You know, I'm 56. I'm still waiting for the talk from my mother. It hadn't happened. I had to go to nursing school and learn about such things. I think around, puberty age, when you're having the talk about periods and all that, as soon as somebody starts having periods, they can become pregnant. But, you can reinforce your family values and what you believe as a parent about respect for your body. I think it all kind of goes in there together.
Wow.
Okay.
All right, we got 2 minutes and 15 seconds, left. Mrs. Hall, we want to certainly thank you for coming into the studio today.
My pleasure.
All right, is there anything else that we did not cover that you just want to stress?
It is definitely something women need to be aware of. It is not a death sentence if someone has cervical cancer. It can be curable in the early stages. Even if it's more advanced, there is certainly treatment that women can have, and people need to be responsible for their own health.
All right, Quabila, minute and a half. Any final questions or comments on your end?
I just want to say thank you to Ms. Hall for coming to share this wonderful information. I would like for her to please leave some websites or links that people can go to find viable information and not just, some web-based, some net website,
The American Cancer Society is always a good site. Also, the National Institute of Health has the National Cancer Institute underneath that. Those are both really good sites, and I can leave links with you.
All right, well, thank you. And again, this is one of our Beyond the Ribbon discussions. People who have conditions have it 24/7, 365. We need to get beyond just wearing a ribbon for a cause and get to know what the cause is about.
I agree. Thank you for sharing information with the public.
And we're certainly glad to do it, and want to once again thank Mrs. Hall for stopping by the studio today. Want to thank Quabila for calling in and pretty much doing community conversations from her house. Appreciate each and every one of you. May God keep and bless each and every one of you. This is Community Conversations. You listen to KLEK 102.5 FM.
Okay. No, I just wasn't sure. Now people.
Thank you for listening to Community Conversations on KLEK 102.5 FM, a program focusing on the people working to make the Jonesboro community a better place while offering viewpoints from all sides of the issues. The views expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of KLEK 102.5 FM, the voice of Arkansas Minority Advocacy Council, or our underwriters or sponsors.
Can you imagine a place where families experience the full